This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Jerry Lehane on the record, 40 years of the Dogmatics, is about the iconic life and career of one of the best local garage punk bands still in existence. 3/4 of the group met in the first grade at St. Matthew's Catholic School in Dorchester, and after 8 years in parochial school, they formed the band and released their first single in 1984, 38 years ago. Just a few months ago, at the end of March, they released their first new music in almost 4 decades, a 5-song EP called Drop That Needle. Many moons ago, their all-night after-hours parties at the group's Thayer Street loft in the south end of Boston, with live bands playing till sunrise, are still legendary in the punk history of the Boston music scene. Here to talk about their new music release is my old friend, guitarist, singer, songwriter of the Dogmatics, Jerry Lehane. Welcome to Wachtelligence, Jerry.
Thank you.
Let's talk about St. Matthew's School in Dorchester. Peter, Paul O'Halloran, and you met in the first grade at St. Matthew's School in Dorchester, and you spent 8 years together in school. Which was worse, going to St. Matthew's or going to the bathroom at the Rat?
That would have to be go to the bathroom at the Rat, without a doubt.
I wanted to start a dog's myth. Any priest abuse stories? Are there any? Did any of you ever punch a priest in Catholic school?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, and no tawdry tales. So, unfortunately, good education, pretty strict, but we did have that nun. Unfortunately, I wasn't on the end of her wrath. It was I happened to witness her, hurt another student, which was normal back that day for the nuns. There was a lot of, I guess they would call it corporal punishment, right? So.
I guess I had a lot of friends that went to Catholic school. None of them like it anymore.
Yeah, it's changed now, but back in the day it was all about discipline, and your parents wanted you to have discipline because they were kind of struggling. Everyone's working, and someone takes over the job for the day, and so you could never complain about any of that stuff.
So tell me about Peter and Paul O'Halloran. How'd you guys hang out? What'd you like about each other?
I just got a lot. It's one of those things. When you live in a neighborhood in Boston, the streets are really close together. So they lived on Fuller Street. I lived on Rockwell, 3 streets apart. But a street in the city is like a city in a state. So there's kids from that street, there's kids from that. So we both like street hockey. We would play a lot of times in the street hockey games. And then it progressed from there, like just the regular kid stuff. And then about the 7th grade, we had another friend, TK, who started playing the guitar. Playing the guitar and listening to, we started listening to Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple up in his attic, and we kind of got the bug right then, which is odd for kids from Dorchester because most kids are trying to get into Don Bosco or Boston Latin and then playing a sport and going to college. But I don't know, it stopped there.
Well, Paul moved to 8 Thayer Street, which is a couple of blocks from me, about a mile away from me in the South End today. Oh. And you started a band with, and Peter moved in.
Right? So I was still in Weymouth. I was working down there. And, Paul had moved in with our other lifelong friend, Tommy Keenan. And Tommy was playing in a band called Spearhead Go. And he was saying, hey, this is how you do it. You guys got to move up to the city. And why don't you check out this place, this loft I have. And the loft was 3,000 square feet, just like you could imagine, of just a wide open building that had an open bathroom with no walls. There were no walls inside the loft. So that's what we did. We built our walls, built our rooms, and I moved up. And at that time, it was 1981, I'm guessing. and I paid $75 a month for rent. That included everything.
In the South End.
In the South End. And if you've seen what that place looks like now,
Oh, yeah.
well, that's right. You live right there. That place, it's... Whoop.
After that, your drummer was Dan Shannon. He left for college, and you got Tommy Long from Squantum. You were just talking about Squantum. And when he was 18 years old, how did you get involved with Tommy Long back then?
So again, during that time when we had lived in Dorchester in the 8th grade, most of us moved to the South Shore. So TK moved to Squantum. He lived on Orchard Street. He met all these kids there, and one of them was this skinny little kid, Tommy Long, who professed to play the drums. So when we were looking for a drummer, he said, I know this kid from Squantum that'd be into it. And he showed up, and he did his thing, and we're like, he was kind of raw then. You could imagine at 18 years old, but he was taking lessons over in Quincy.
Right.
And I don't know, just fit in.
And that's how the Dogmatics, formed.
Yeah, and the other guy you were talking about there, Dan Shannon, we're still friends with Dan today. Dan has he's a lobsterman, and he has a shop down in Duxbury called Snug Harbor Lobsters. I'm not giving him a plug, but yeah, we see him now. And he's white hair, he's, a rugged lobsterman, and still loves the band, still good friends.
Well, let's talk about Thayer Street. You were talking about the first show there you played as the Gutter Snipes, and Pete suggested the Dogmatics. And your first show was at Cantones in 1981. You guys, when you were forming in the early 80s, this was right after the first influx of punk music into the Boston scene in the late 70s, where late 78, 79, Robin Lane, Willie Alexander, you were the last part of that first generation. So that gives you a lot of credibility, and that tells everybody what was going on in music in Boston.
Right. So, you are correct around that now. But think about this, even though that was our first gig, what we had been doing, because we didn't know what we were doing, so we didn't know how to the logistics or the booking of the bands, how to do all that. So TK, who I mentioned, had this band Spearhead Go, and we kind of he made a little almost like a little map for us. Okay, you got to call this person. You're going to get a crappy night. You play that night. You tell all your friends to come down to the show, and you'll get a better night. And that's what we kind of did. But
you played a Tuesday night for no pay, right?
Oh yeah, that was at Cantos. But so the thing was, Peter and Paul and TK all went to Boston Tech. Guess who the high school president was at that time? Richie Parsons from Unnatural Acts. So we became friends with Richie, and Richie was playing in Unnatural Acts at right around that time, and they were doing fantastic. But we were more of I don't know if we're considered a punk band, but we were playing that sort of style just because we were young and fast. But we got the show through Marl. We went down to Cantones. We had a cassette that we made in the studio. We gave it to the bartender, who was Marlo, who owned Cantones, and she loved us. So that was the thing. Once she loved us, it was all set. The shows got we were bouncing from there back to Mavericks back to Cantones, and then we moved up that little ladder where like, oh, we're opening up for the real kids on a Friday night. And, you know, it's just like, holy shit, you know, and these are bands that we were kind of influenced by and looked up to, you know? So.
Well, you know, the scene was wild. You had Last Stand, Treat Her Right, the Titanics, Unnatural Acts, you just meant Gangrene, Scruffy the Cat, the Turbines, the Liars, the Neighborhoods, Barris, Whitfield, the Savages, Mission of Burma, the Outlets, the Niche, Classic Ruins. There was a great scene at the time.
Yeah, I think you could go to, you know, 4 or 5 different shows in a single night and at least like one band on that show, and a lot of people would do that. So there was quite a scene. It doesn't happen this day. AJ, it couldn't survive, I don't think.
No.
You know, it's too gentrified. It's, you know.
Well, you know, back in the day too, you know, when I started working for the Beat magazine, you know, that was when I first was turned on to the Dogmatics in 84. 85. You know, we were located in Alston, right across from Bunratty's. The owners were David G. and Mickey O'Halloran, who worked at Bunratty's. And that was one scene. You had bars like Harper's Ferry, Molly's, O'Brien's, Gladstone's, all those. And then you had Kenmore Square. You had another scene center with the Rat and Jumpin' Jack Flash. Then you had Cambridge, Jonathan Swiss in Harvard Square, Nostalgia in Central Square, Jack's. You had tons and tons of places. And, you know, here you guys were, and you guys were getting very, very popular. Tell me about that, getting into the scene then in the early 80s. What was it like?
Well, so that, you make friends with other bands. You know, we were down on Thayer Street, like you said, so we had a loft. We had, you know, you had other bands that played there. The Del Fuegos, again, they were starting out at the time, and we started playing with them. And that's when you had this after hours scene, and you would play 13 times a month back then. Nowadays, you can't do that. They'll tell you, AJ, they'll say, you're playing at our club. We don't want you to play anywhere else in town for the next 3 months, okay? That's like part of the deal. Back then, you just did what you wanted. You played all the time. You made friends. And people came. People went out, and they loved the music. And, yeah, you had that sense of community, like like you're saying. There was a scene back then. And you know, you could see 5 different shows in one night. Pop around. And Boston's small, right? I'm sure you've gone around town, AJ, right? When you're interviewing, probably jump from club to club to club, right?
Jerry, I did that for 10 years right in Insignificant, going to 4 or 5 clubs a night. I go to the Chet's, the Rat, the Underground, Jack's, Swift's, Buns, Harper's Ferry, Molly's, Ed Burke's, and then back to Thayer Street.
Right. And so that, you know, think about that, doing that now.
Well, my thoughts about Thayer Street and about you guys, when I met you, I was a little bit older than you. I was from the Beat magazine, which was mainstream. I didn't work for the Noise. And, you know, there I was showing up at all these, the Chets and all these punk rock gigs and really digging the scene. And I was older than you guys, and all you knew that. And then, you know, I wrote for the Beat, but everybody tolerated me. And then, you know, I remember once, the first time I went back to Thayer Street, it was after a gig. I said, man, I couldn't believe it. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. It just like you said, that big space. And there I was with 24, 25 other people arriving at the same time. What a fuck you attitude to the world. Hey, the bar's closed, but our party's not. We were walking around with beers in our hands, walking to Thayer Street, and then the music would start at 3 a.m. and play until sunrise. And I couldn't believe it. I realized then that punk music and the Boston music scene, it wasn't a scene. It wasn't after hours party. It was a way of life, man. It was wild.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't have to say anything. That's right. You are right. And, you know, staying up to sunrise after being up all day, you could do it back then. We had that loft that we had like I said, was 3,000 square feet. We could fit maybe 200, 250 in there during one of those shows that we would do after hours. And like you said, we would have 3 bands. It'd be like
The
noonday.
Replacements.
Yeah, they stayed there, but they didn't play there. So we've had other bands that have played there.
Del Fuegos
many times. Noonday, Underground, Last Stand a lot. The Classic Ruins. There's another old time band. But AJ, like you said, so when you go inside that loft, you have to walk up those old wooden stairs, right? And so we would buy beer, get a keg. We'd put it in our freight elevator. So if the police came, we'd shut the elevator and press it to another floor, and they wouldn't know. They would usually be coming because it was crowded, and they didn't want. It's a code violation for the fire department, so they would check on it. And the first
I was
time
going to ask you about the cops. Did they come often?
For the first time that they came, okay, the very first time that they came, we had Kelly Walsh was working the door downstairs, and we never charged money. We said, give what you can give. Help us with our rent, because none of us were really working at the time. We were doing full-time this. So, but it wasn't a lot of money, like I said. So the first time we came, the police took our money. So the first time, so we learned, okay, we're smarter than these guys. So the next time, the next party, yeah, we get the money at the door, then we hand it off to someone else, then they take it upstairs, give it to someone else, and then someone else hides it in the back. That was done. That was over. We're not paying bribes to live here. So, but so that really helped our,
Can you imagine that happening with the cops in 2022?
Someone would film it. Can't get away with that stuff anymore. But so that really helped with the community. A lot of bands crossed over. So you had punk rock bands playing with rock bands playing with art bands. You just all over the map, and we all coexisted. And that's a difficult thing. And you made a lot of friends, and it was a positive time. It was a turbulent time, just like a lot of times. I think we were in a recession then. I believe Reagan was in office. Everyone hated him. So we had our enemies, and that we could focus our negativity on, where our community was very positive. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Do you want me to contact my friend Governor Baker to have him declare 8 Thayer Street as a historical national landmark before he leaves office?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
I'm on it.
It would be. We are mentioned in a lot of these maps that they have, like, of bands in town, and just because we lived on Thayer Street and we named the record Thayer Street.
Right.
People are like, oh, is this in Providence? They don't know. It's in Boston. It's a loft area.
In 1984, you released your first single on your own Cat Records, Give Me the Shakes, backed with Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock. Eddie Cochran died real young. Why did you pick 20 Flight Rock?
So the way it kind of worked in our band at the time. So Peter loved Eddie Cochran. Gene Vincent, he was like our 50s inspiration in the band. Paul was one who loved all the punk rock and stuff. Me, I was the guy that wrote the song. So, and I was kind of influenced by everything. I wasn't pigeonholed, but with Peter, so he was the one who suggested that. I think it was that, or the song "Tell Me" by the Rolling Stones, a real early, obscure sort of songs. And Pete was always like, "Hey, we should put one song on that kind of represents what kind of music we like." you know, and that's how they used to do it in the 50s. You know, someone would cover someone else's song, especially Buddy Holly and like I said, Eddie Cochran, we used to play so many of his songs. We played Come On Everybody, Something Else, you know, we just loved them. And so 20 Flight Rock is what we chose.
Do you think Eddie Cochran would have been a good member of the Dogmatics?
Oh my God, yeah. There would have been a jump up in talent, I'll tell you that much.
I've heard the Dogmatics called Eddie Cochran meets Johnny Thunders. Care to comment on that?
Yeah, that just kind of goes to show you right there what I said about Peter and Paul. Paul being the punk influence in our band, and then Pete having 1950s rock and roll sentimentalities, you know. So I think that's where you get that combination, and they were the main influence at that point, you know. And I'm in the background trying to, you know, I'm listening and hoping to get some of my songs and we kind of went that way eventually, you know.
You, in 1985, we were just talking about it, your first album, Thayer Street. You made the cover of the College Music Journal. Now, that's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah, that was surprising. And again, we didn't have those publications. We don't know about stuff like that. But me and Jimmy O'Halloran were at the channel. I forget who we were going to see, but we ran into Albert O and a bunch of these DJs that that really didn't ever talk to us, or we knew. Right. And they approached us, and
because they were mainstream rock and didn't play. Yeah. You know, you were more of an FNX band.
Right. Yeah, you're in college radio, so you know they were the one who told us, and they said this is a really good thing, you know. So right after that, we ended up getting a manager, which we never had. We always did our own work, but we had to get someone because we were getting asked to play more and travel. And so that's what happened after that. You'd be surprised the power of the press, especially if it's respected. And that's called, like you said, I don't know if that's still around today.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's the 20th of December. The rain is coming down. Kenmore Square's deserted now. The college kids have left town, and it sure don't feel like Christmas time. It sure doesn't feel like Christmas time. It sure don't feel like Christmas time. It sure doesn't feel like Christmas time.
What are some of the dog songs performed by other artists? I know the Mighty Mighty Bostonians did the New Orleans prankster Dash Rip Rock, the Pussy Willows, Heap, Swedish rock punk kings, the Locomotions. What were some of the songs that other bands covered of yours?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've had a lot of, Christmas Time has been covered. It Sure Don't Feel Like Christmas Time has been covered probably more than any of the other songs. The Thayer Street was used in for a German soccer team. They used it, just the music, and they changed the lyrics, which we allowed them to do. It was like the opening song when the professional soccer team comes out onto the field. And it's which is an odd Pussy Whipped. Yeah, we let Dash Rip Rock use that song, and because of that, I mean, people down, you know, we play other cities, and people knew about the song because Dash Rip Rock. They're quite they're kind of like a trip. I put us like we're a single A baseball team. They're like a triple A. All right, so they had more fans, and we definitely benefited from them putting our song on their record. The same with the Bostonians, like you said. Those other bands are from Europe. Lots of bands from Europe cover our stuff, but you got to look at it. A country over there is like a state. You know what I mean? It's not. People think, oh, it's a big deal. It's not a big deal, but we definitely appreciate it, and we love it. So,
hey, you mentioned one of the bands did Sure Don't Feel Like Christmas Time, Xmas Time. Paul wrote that.
Paul wrote that, yeah.
Paul, what's the story behind that?
So we met Sam Berger at the Rad. He owned Homestead Records. He put out our first 2 EPs, or records, whatever you want to call them. And again, all this sort of stuff doesn't happen like, oh, my people are going to meet your people. We were at the Rat drinking beers. Sam was there, and Sam's like, hey, I'm going to put out a Christmas record through Midnight Records. You guys want to contribute a song? And we're like, yeah, we'll contribute a song. Paul writes the song. We get Jonathan Paley to produce it down at Radio Bait. He does a fantastic thing. He changes the tempo and the melody, and we go with this sort of Phil Spector beat, which everyone knows,
Right.
So we do, we do that, and the song just becomes an iconic song for a band playing in single A baseball.
I still hear that. That's funny, but I still hear that song on the radio today on Christmas time.
Yes, I know. Well, I mean, yeah. So then, fast forward to 1990 something, and the Mighty Mighty Boston's asked if they can put it on their record. 2 years ago, Letters to Cleo, another Boston band, put it on a record with a bunch of people. But again, all these people that have put it on, this is our luck. They put them on major records, major like Atlantic, Mercury, whatever their label is, big labels that actually take care of the bands.
Right.
All benefit records. so what happens there when it's a benefit, the money goes the other way, which is
That's
great.
Right.
So yeah, so all our luck would have it, it's on a benefit record.
Hey, we said about other bands that do your songs. How about the Dogmatics? I know you do Summertime. You mentioned Richie Parsons from Unnatural Acts. What other local bands covers have you done?
You know what? I think we always drank for the cup of Richie. I think we've always done a bunch of Richie's songs. I can't think of another local band that we've covered. And I love the Liars. I love the Neats. But you know what? When we were doing, we didn't cover many local bands. I think you just pretty much said the only local band that we've ever covered was that song.
Let's talk about Paul. On October 23rd, 1986, he died in a tragic motorcycle accident. He died so young. Like Eddie Cochran, it was a Shakespearean tragedy. Who knows what he would have done? The denial of potentiality. It's like the 2 young princes dying in the tower of Richard III. But thinking back, I remember hearing 2 stories. I remember hearing he was a passenger at the time when the tire went flat. And I also heard that they were changing the tire when another car hit him. What happened?
So that day, I was actually at the Loft with Johnny Getchus, who was in our band. And we had recently returned from our second tour. Eddie McGarry, who worked with us, was driving Paul down to his parents' house in Rocky Nook, Kingston, at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon to pick up another motorcycle. So those guys all love bikes, and they had another bike. Eddie was going to drop them off. Paul was going to ride the other bike back. Anyways, somewhere, it was actually in Weymouth, they got a flat tire while they were driving on the motorcycle. Paul was on the back. They slid under it, an 18-wheeler sideways, and Eddie had, hung on when he got to the other side. Paul was off the bike. And so he got run over, and that was it. And a girl I dated was a nurse at the time, and she was at the Kearney Hospital where they brought him in, and he died immediately. So that was a good thing, and it was a very sad day. Very sad day. Yeah.
Still is. I remember the benefits. I remember a couple of memorials at the Rat.
Yep.
And I know that brothers Johnny and Jimmy have taken over in the past 30 years his bass and singing chores. How did that happen?
So at the very beginning when it happened in 1986, like I said, we're all living in the loft, and it was pretty devastating. We just stopped playing. I moved out of the loft. Peter moved out, and I played in some other bands in the meantime, and it took a long time for us to get back together. And like you said, we were doing like these one-off shows, and it would always be Jimmy O'Halloran or Johnny O'Halloran filling in for their brother Paul on bass, and that's how it started. And then we all got married, and we had kids, so then we stopped.
What's the setup now? 3 O'Halloran brothers and you and Tommy Long?
Actually, the setup right now is me on guitar and vocals. James Young, he's our newest addition. He plays mandolin, does vocals, and plays guitar. Jimmy O'Halloran on bass. Peter O'Halloran on lead guitar and vocals, and then Tommy Long on drums. And occasionally, Johnny joins us. He lives in Arizona now, so he'll be up for July 4th, and we're playing in Somerville at Boynton Yards. And he'll join us, and we'll have 3 guitar players on stage. It's awesome. And he can jump in that quick. He knows all the songs inside out. True professional. And
well, I just want to bring up about Johnny O'Halloran is that my drinking relationship with the Dogmatics, you've always pretty much denied guzzling beers with me for the past 35 years or so. But
I couldn't do it.
But Tommy Long always guzzled beers with me. None of the O'Halloran brothers were really, really drinkers, but Tommy did for years. And in the past 5 or 6 years, he's been slowly declining and saying no. But Johnny is always front and center when I show up with a beer to guzzle with him. So when he hears this, I hope he grins.
Oh, he will.
Now, I know the Dogmatics toured the U.S. with Los Lobos, the Replacements. Who else?
So that tour thing, we didn't tour. We played with all those bands. When we toured on our own. We would have there was a company out of New York that did all our booking when we got a manager, and we would play all the college towns, and a lot of times you would open for other bands that were touring the same circuit. So like Guadalcanal Diary, like you said, the Replacements. And when you do that, other bands come out that you might, I think we met the Young Fresh Fellows out in Seattle. I don't know if you know about that band or.
You played with the Bangles too, right?
But that was in Boston. That was fun. They wouldn't let us anywhere near those girls.
You were talking about, you mentioned Jonathan Paley being a producer for the first album. He's from the Paley Brothers, Nervous Eaters. You also had Johnny Angel from the Blackjacks and the Swinginese involved. How was Johnny Angel involved with the Dogmatics?
So listening to radio at that time, we would listen to the college radio station, 88.1, MBR, the Breakfast of Champions, and then what's the Late Risers Club. So I would listen to that, and they started playing this band, the Blackjacks, and I loved the recording. I heard it was so. I just thought that whoever did this, it was really good. And I talked to Julie Kreisman, who was our manager at the time, and she's like, "Oh, I know that guy. That's Johnny Angel." Or Johnny Wendell Holmes. And
a stockbroker.
So we were introduced, and he, he did a great job. We brought him down to a studio down in the suburbs in Kingston, and I think we did the whole record in a day.
What was the difference between working with those two geniuses, Johnny Angel and Jonathan Bailey?
Well, yeah, I love Jonathan. Put it that way. That's all I'm going to say there.
Okay.
I know an unnamed sister, Serena. There ain't nobody that's meaner. She's 5'1", weighs 155. And if you have her for a class, you wish you weren't alive. Sister Serena, Sister Serena. There ain't nobody meaner than Sister Serena.
Let's talk about your solo stuff. You played with the Matweeds, Hotbox, and the Hornets. How was the music from these bands different from your songs with the Dogmatics?
That's a very good question. Very, very difficult to answer. All those bands again that you mentioned that I played in afterwards were all friends that we made when I was playing in the Dogmatics, and we're all kind of finding our way. You learned a lot doing that, because I'm always with the same people playing the same stuff. When you're with other musicians, it does, broaden your horizon, for the lack of a better word. But you start picking up little techniques, little small things that might not seem anything to an outsider or a fan, but little things that really help. You get experience. So I loved it. Still friends with all those people. And a lot of them are done well. A lot of them gone on and, just hit it out of the park,
Do you have any side projects right now? I mean, don't you have a new album or a new song coming out with Dickie Barrett?
No, so that we already did that. I did that. We did a single, a one-off with Dickie, and that was for Rumbar, a song I wrote. I did a record or a CD with Rumbar Records. And I noticed earlier you said, I don't know if you can see this right here, that this is the one that would just dropped, as they say. This isn't the first thing we've released since we've come back on Rumbar. We released She's the One, which was a single and a CD back in 2019. So this is 3 years in a row we're going with new material.
Why don't you give me a web address so that people can keep up with what you're doing solo and with the Dogmatics? Yeah,
so thedogmatics.com. That's it. Thedogmatics.com. So James Young, our Mando player, he's the guy that does all the IT. So everything's up there. Shows, dates, links, everything you need. Yeah. We don't have any pictures of you drinking beer, though. We don't have any up there.
Okay, you're a cousin of crime fiction author Dennis Lehane. He's a big fan, right?
Yeah, he's a fan. I don't know if he's a big fan. He has lots of fans himself.
All right. If I said, as a songwriter, you are the king of pop hooks and girl songs, what would you say?
Again, anything that you're doing, you're influenced by someone else. And I just think that the music that I listened to back in the day, primarily, was Nick Lowe and Dave Edmunds, and, even local bands like the Liars. I was always in love with the hook. And I think that's where I learned how to make that sound, that one sound that people go, wow, that's really cool.
What are some of your favorite hooks?
Pretty Woman is a great one right there by Roy Orbison. Just that little riff at the beginning. As soon as you hear that, that song, right? Right. Don't Give It Up Now, by Jeff Conley of the Liars.
Right.
That beginning. A hook can be a vocal. Barron's Whitfield. Have you seen Barron's, right?
Barris and I know each other for 50 years from New Jersey.
So Barris is, him singing, ow, 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 right away. You're like, oh, that's Barris. We know it's Barris. So, it's a good hook. I think you spoke of Robin Lane and the Chartbusters.
Right.
The song When Things Go Wrong was an older song, but the very beginning of that, when you hear that little A minor hook that they play, you know immediately what the song is. The Del Fuegos were really good with that stuff. Dan Zanes did a great job with that. But yeah, there's so many. I could go on and on. There's a million people that write hooks.
What about your own songs? What are some of your favorite hooks in your own songs?
That one that we Drop the Needle is a good one. Give Me the Shakes is a pretty good one. Sister Serena, I would say, and the riff in Thayer Street is really good. That was actually Jonathan Paley helped me with that. He said, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And then we worked on it a little bit.
Right.
And he had a really keen mind for that sort of thing. I think he's like pop all the way. I think, yeah.
What's about your favorite girl songs?
The girl songs. Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. We have the Good Looking Girls on there. We Saturday Night Again would be a song about the love of girls. Give Me the Shakes is kind of the same. So, lots of them. But again, I defer. I think I probably love songs that other people have written a lot more than the songs that I have written. It's kind of cringy to listen to your own song. It's a weird thing. It's probably like, do you ever listen after you've done an interview to your own voice talking?
I don't listen to my interviews afterwards.
That's a good thing. That's why you have an editor up there that can help you out.
David's great and Harrison's great.
Yeah.
Why? And I've seen you guys for so many decades over the years. Why are the Dogmatics such a good bar band?
Yeah, we're kind of stuck there. It's, I think we relate on a street level to a lot of people.
Well, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No.
You're a great band to see in a bar.
Right, exactly. And so last night we played at the Magic Room in Norwood, and so that this place, it's a nice new place out in a place that it resembled the South End back in the 80s.
Right.
There's all these old buildings, and he's set up this fantastic club. Now, that club has a really nice PA, and we're all hooked up and everything. And it's something I know that it makes you sound better. But today, for instance, we're playing a thing called the Porch Fest in Quincy, and we're playing on someone's lawn where they only use the mics for the vocals, no mics for all of the drums or the guitars, and that's the way I like it. And I want all the people pushed up against us when we're playing, because you can really feel it. It's a lot different than playing on a stage than when you're playing in like a barroom atmosphere where you really feel the energy. It's a good thing.
Right. Wait, let's talk about, you have a great new record, Drop That Needle, that's out.
Yep.
Why did it take so long for you to record and release this new music?
Well, again, we would, like I said earlier, all of us have, kids and they're in school. I have two that are just finishing up college. So when the high school stuff kind of stopped, we started playing again together. And then Lou approached us, Lou Mansdorf of Rumbauer, and said, "Hey, I would like to put out some stuff." So we got to the chore of writing, and that's what it is. And it's harder now. Back then it was easier, to write, just because you were living that life
right.
7 days a week. It's different. We practice every Sunday, and I got a little loft over my garage here where we have all the gear set up, and it's great. That's more fun than playing out at a club, going up there, seeing my buddies, and now we're just jamming, trying to write stuff, drinking, eating, just shooting the shit. That's the real fun.
You just had a benefit last night for Ukraine.
Yes.
And you have a new song that you wrote about Ukraine.
Correct.
Please tell me about that.
I didn't write that. So that's Peter's. Peter wrote that. That's Peter's song. It's not about Ukraine. It's about AK-47s. which is the gun that is used to kill a lot of people. And there's really no necessary reason for someone to own that gun unless you're you're in combat in the war. So the song is called Automat Kalashnikov, and Automat Kalashnikov made the AK-47, and that's why they call it the AK-47. So so those lyrics, he's been working, I'm not kidding, 25 years, and he finally finished the song. So that's great.
Jerry, can you play a few measures of Drop That Needle so that we can hear how great that song is?
Yeah. Okay. Let me just grab a pick here. So that was the riff, or the little hook at the beginning of Drop the Needle. So it was like kind of fooling around like with trying to do like a Stonesy sort of thing, and it didn't come out that way. It was more rock, and so it's like. So it does that for 4 times, and then it's into drop that needle, I wanna hear the record one more time. Drop that needle on the 45, I wanna hear the record one more time. Give me the Kinks, give me the Liars, Radio Birdman, don't you forget about Mocking the Myers. So I just kept screwing around with that, and the kid that plays in our band, James, started singing with me at a higher level.
Right.
It was really cool. The only thing about that song is at the very end, you triple up the drop that needle on the 45, I wanna hear the record one more time, and you keep going. And I'm not good at the breathing part, so I don't know how to circular breathe. You run out of air, and at the end you're like, it's just falling apart. But yeah, that's it. And then we just, one guy is doing the little riff, and the other guy is doing, and it just goes together. So that's what you try to do. You write the chords with the little hook.
Jerry, it's a great song. It could be released in 1984, just like any of your music in 1984 could still be released as great music in 2022. It's just great. You have a great sound. I love it. And what's in the future for the Dogmatics now? What are you guys going to do now?
So right now we're, like I said, we're playing this week. Then we're playing in Somerville on July 9th. That's all on that website, thedogmatics.com. We're flying out to Minneapolis. We're going to play a couple of shows out there in late July. And, an interesting show in August. Let me see. In August, we are playing on Boston Harbor in the afternoon. It's the 20th of August, and Barron's is playing with us, but we're backing him up. We're the band for Barron's.
Very cool. We'll be there.
We've done a couple of those with him, and he is just talk about a pro. And he knows how to work a crowd. It's magic, and you feel the tingles when you're on stage with him. Yeah, good guy.
So Jerry, I got to ask you the question that I asked, the final question I asked all my guests that appear on Wachtelligence. What was the first concert you ever attended?
I think I was 14 years old. I know I was like 14. And me and Peter and Paul, we in TK went to the Cape Cod Coliseum. I think it was 1977. And we saw ZZ Top with Blue Oyster Cult opening. It was a good show. They had barn animals on stage. I remember that. It was like a weird tour. There was a name for the tour, but ZZ Top was one of our favorites. We really liked that band. And Blue Oyster Cult, that was great. The opening band was called Stars with a Z at the end. But that was the first time I ever walked into a concert, and that was a big rink, the Cape Cod Coliseum.
Right.
And it was just like, oh my God, that, right? It's one of those things.
Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time. I can't wait to see you guys in the summer playing, backing up Barron's. Thank you so much for spending the time and talking to me and my people on Wachtelligence.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.